Welcome back. Let's talk matters that strike at the heart of our democratic hygiene now, the issue of money and politics. As the countdown to the country's 2026 local government elections begins, the debate over money and politics is once again taking center stage. This time it's about who funds political power and how much we are allowed to know about it. This is in the wake, of course, of the recent symposium that was held by the IEC. The ANC is leading the charge, proposing a sharp increase in the threshold for disclosing private donations to political parties and more than tripling the annual donation limit. So that has been in place. If passed, it would mark the most significant shift in political funding rules since the introduction of the Political Party Funding Act. At the same time, a new report by the IEC and the Human Sciences Research Council shows a clear trend of many parties wanting fewer restrictions and more room to maneuver. But what does this all mean for transparency, accountability, and the integrity of our elections? Let's speak now to the IEC Deputy CEO, Mr. George Mahlangu, who joins me now for that conversation. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. In a moment, I want us to focus on the symposium that you held as the IEC, as well as that interesting survey that you did with the HSRC. But I just want your broad reflections. We've had the Political Party Funding Act in place with the quarterly reporting requirements happening for the last few years. What's the overall impressions of the robustness of the system and its role in ensuring democratic hygiene?
Yeah, thank you very much, Tula Sizwe, and your viewers at home. Just a little bit of background, Tula Sizwe. This symposium that we had in the past 2 days was mainly to evaluate the impact since the inception of the Act, which was implemented on the 1st of April 2021, but also to identify gaps, the challenges, and emerging issues that we have encountered over the period. And lastly, to facilitate the collaboration among the various stakeholders. Now, from what we have done or what we have observed since the 4 years, we have been successful in regular publications of the disclosure reports, which assisted the public to know who funds who. We have been successful in terms of submission our reports with Parliament, because you may be aware that we are accountable to Parliament. So on annual basis, we submit our annual reports to Parliament. And I must say, this was the second research report. This was undertaken through HSRC by the Commission. And of course, there are challenges that we have experienced during these 4 years.
Yeah, so let's talk about this research report then, done by the IEC and the HSRC, the Human Sciences Research Council. From what I read, it shows low levels of trust in politics and politicians, political parties in particular. But at the core of the questions around the systems that the Act has put in place, what I found concerning are the levels of awareness and disinterest in a way in participating in donations. Tell me a bit more about what you found and what it means for the system as a whole, the investment of ordinary South Africans in the question of who funds democracy, who funds these political parties.
Yeah, Tula Sizwe, the finding of the report, and more especially on the people that were surveyed, there are various views. But some of the views that came out of this report, they show disinterest of individuals, that were surveyed in politics. And some of these people who were surveyed are people who are not aware about this act. And in terms of the level of economics, they were of the opinion that this law doesn't affect them because even if they vote, the level of, they are mixing what the role of the commissions would be in terms of provision of jobs. We are not, in the scheme of provision of jobs as the commission. And some of them were referring to their personal affordability in comparison to what their day-to-day requirements vis-a-vis donating to a political party.
Yeah. So even awareness of the multi-party fund is low, from what I understand, from what you found.
Yes, it is. It is low, and I think what concerns the people that were surveyed, also what came out of the symposium, is that the related party donations are becoming a problem. For an example, you get public companies like your Finboss. Finboss, which is related to Capitec. You get companies like Discovery. Instead of donating to a multi-party democracy fund, meanwhile they are receiving their money from the general public, but they choose to donate to a particular political party. Now, part of what we should look at moving forward out of what came out of the symposium is that, is it correct for corporations that receive their money from general public across the board, but when they are supposed to donate to a multi-party democracy fund, they donate to political parties of their choice?
Sure. That's an interesting question, isn't it? Because would it not come down to an issue of personal choice? And personal, by person, I don't mean natural person only, including juristic person, personal choice and preference. That is a really tricky one. But I get the problem you're trying to solve for, that you have political parties that receive massive donations, including from corporates, while some other political parties don't. Whereas, would that be solved if that money went into the multi-party democracy fund?
I think so. I think it will be solved because the multi-party democracy fund doesn't choose color.
Yeah.
It is meant to strengthen democracy. And if you look at it from this point of view, Thulasizwe, actually it makes sense for business to put money in that fund to strengthen democracy, because business operate in a platform that is strengthened by the democracy in the country. Now, if business doesn't fund democracy, the likelihood of business operating in a weakened democracy present itself. So it only makes sense that business must put money in the multi-party democracy fund, which strengthens the opposition as well.
Yeah.
So that, a strong opposition will assist to create a stronger platform in where the business will operate from.
So that's the one interesting side of looking at it from the voters, the donors to the various political parties, as well as the fund. Let's talk about the recipients of the donated funds, the political parties. Some interesting views coming through from the symposium. What's this concern about the current limit, the threshold above which donations need to be disclosed? It currently stands at 100,000 rand, right, per annum. So if you donate anything above that, you need to disclose. But I understand that from the symposium, it became clear that many political parties are unhappy about it. What's the general thread of the dissatisfaction?
There are two views, Thulasizwe. And you would be aware that the National Assembly, the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, they have passed a resolution that increased these thresholds from 100,000 to 200,000 as your lower limit, and then from 15 million to 30 million as the high end limit. Now, these two school of thoughts that I'm talking about is that the civil society groups, for an example, there's a matter that is before court by my vote counts that is challenging exactly the very same increase from 100,000 to 200,000, 15 million to 30 million. They are of the opinion that even the 100,000 must be reduced further. On the other hand, you've got political parties who are saying, but who can influence us by donating 100,000 or by donating 15 million?
Yeah.
So political parties are of the opinion that this must be doubled. Now, the reasons that they are bringing forth is that even the 100,000, when it was decided upon initially, there was no study that was, taken aboard to determine whether 100,000 is sufficient or not.
Yeah.
But now that they've realized that 100,000 and 15 million is not sufficient, they are then doubling this to 200,000 and 30 million. We haven't had anything from the court by the challenge of my vote count. So we will hear whether my vote count is successful in terms of challenging the current threshold, which are 115, because these thresholds have not been promulgated as yet. The proposed one.
Yeah.
They are still sitting at the desk of the president for promulgation.
Yeah. So lastly then, to the extent that there's anyone who needs it to be highlighted why all of this matters for the conduct of our democracy, please sum it up nicely for us, including questions about who funds these political parties, as well as possibilities of external funding, and why all of this would matter in our democratic context.
I think all the participants agreed that political parties must be funded. I think the view was that, is it sufficient or not? But there were very interesting views that came out of that symposium. Actually, the Minister of Finance came in to present that, his wishes, I think it was his personal view, that government can progressively, if government can progressively increase the public funding, so meaning that find a way to have as much public funding as possible and little private funding, because private funding has got a potential of influencing the policies and the decision of government. But this increase in progressive funding in public funding will be accompanied by Auditor Generals in view, audits.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, Auditor General is not reviewing or is not auditing these financial statements of political parties, even though they receive some form of money from the public purse. But the also interesting that came out, which is interesting, is this mandate of the commission of being an EMB, of being an electoral management body, but investigating at the same time. This has got a potential of creating, interference in the independence of the commission, because you may be seen to be targeting a particular political party over the other. Now, what came out there is that maybe we should consider working with other state law agencies, or create a possible inspector general who will look at political funding related matters.
I've got to thank you for your time this afternoon. What a fascinating conversation we've had there with George Mahlangu, who is the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer at the Independent Electoral Commission.